Hi, I'm Michelle Nelson with Warp and Weft History. And lately, I've been realizing that if you are not familiar with our Warp and Weft History classes, that I should probably make some videos about some of the things that we discuss in our uh, history classrooms. So today is Monday, and today I taught two classes. I taught high school U.S. history, and I also taught World History 1. And, each of my classes is unique. Today in high school U.S. history, we discussed the 1950s. We have ended our discussion last week. We talked about the end of World War II. And so we're talking about some of the economic prosperity that occurred in the 1950s. We're also talking about how car culture, the automobile culture rose up in America in the 1950s. We have also discussed the growth of suburbs. All of this is kind of leading up, setting us up for our discussion next week about the civil rights movement and about how many African Americans were locked out of some of this economic prosperity that was booming in the 1950s. I'm also very much a cultural historian, so we spent some time today looking at advertisements for television and wondering why all of these women in the advertisements were wearing evening gowns. I guess if you bought a TV, it would be elegant. So, you'd have to wear an evening gown to watch television. We also were able to I was able to pull from some of my own personal history. I found a video that had appliances, General Electric appliances from the 1950s that my great grandmother actually had in her house that were Mamie Eisenhower pink. And so we used that to discuss the idea that women who through World War II had been asked to work in factories, asked to build airplanes and to weld and do all of these traditionally masculine jobs were now being asked to step into this ultra feminine role. We also discussed some of the criticisms of the whole suburban society. We looked at some song lyrics about ticky-tacky houses and the whole idea that American society was to conform to one particular role because this view of American society was supposed to be in total contrast to communist society. And so how we talked about how Red Scare, and we looked at the old duck and cover videos from the 1950s where the bomb could explode at any moment. So on one hand, you've got this idealism of building this great American life with the anxiety of, the bomb could drop at any moment, and this is what you're supposed to do. We had a good time just looking at one of my students had never heard of I Love Lucy. So of course we had to stop and look at a clip of I Love Lucy, which was like the '1 television show in the 1950s. And really, her character was supposed to be the epitome of a 1950s housewife, kind of ditzy, not really independent at all, just always scheming her way through life. So that was an interesting conversation. We also talked about the Green Book, which was as America developed its car culture, not every place was safe for African Americans as they drove through the country. So we talked a little bit about how the Green Book showed African Americans where they could stay and where was a good place to eat and where they could get gas, where they would be safe. The introduction to the book talked about, one day we hope that we don't have to publish this book. But in the meantime, we don't want you to have to face the embarrassment of racism. So I thought was very interesting. I'm looking forward to getting into the civil rights movement in the coming weeks. Our World History 1 class today, we talked a bit about Hannibal and his ascent over the Alps. We talked about the first emperor of a unified China, and we talked about Ashoka, who was an emperor of India, who, after seeing the carnage of war, changed his heart and spent the rest of his reign trying to atone through Buddhist principles some of the atrocities that he had initiated as a conqueror of India and an inheritor to the Chandragupta Maurya Empire of India. One of the things that stuck out to me this week about my world history class was not necessarily our topics of discussion, but one of the things that I've been trying to help my students with lately has been how to answer question words, things like explain and describe and summarize. Well, one of my students had an issue this week with the phrase, there was a question that asked them to draw a parallel between the building of the Great Wall of China and the unification of China to the reign of Shi Huangti, the first emperor in the Qi dynasty. Well, it took several messages going back and forth before I realized that this student was taking that phrase literally, draw a parallel. When you think about it, it's very similar to a math phrase that someone might be asked to draw a parallelogram. And so that's where their mind was. Where do you want me to draw this? What kind of picture am I supposed to be drawing? And so we had to have a conversation about the phrase, draw a parallel, compare one idea with another, because in our electronic homework, we're not set up to draw pictures unless you're going to take a picture. So that was a very interesting conversation between myself and the students, so that we could understand draw a parallel does not mean to actually draw a picture. So I'm going to make some more of these videos as I continue to teach throughout the week, highlighting some of the things that we discussed in our classes, so that you will know what Warp and Weft history is about and the types of interactions that your students can expect in our history classrooms.